So, I just watched Alex Garland's Civil War 2024 film, and it's good. It's very good. I like it a lot. So, to give you a little bit about myself, um, my name is Sky Ainsworth. I was born and raised here in California and graduated UC Santa Barbara with a bachelor's in English. Joined the Army to be a journalist, which is also public affairs, public relations. And I, since then I've kind of lived and worked in different places in California, uh, but I've also gotten involved in veterans groups and political groups where I live. And what I, so I feel I have a unique perspective on the Civil War film, and like how did it happen? How did it play out? And part of why I'm making this video is because it's like how did this happen? How did this occur? How did he does the director, the writer, uh, get us to the place where okay, this thing happens, and I'm going to be spoiling the film, so because there's just so much. Um, how do you get from the president declaring I'm going to remain for a third term to 14 months later they are busting into the White House and dragging him away? Um, because it's just utterly fascinating to me. Um, like one of the things I'm really enjoying about the film is how every example of what you see happens in a civil war is presented. To me, that is what this the director and writer Alex Garland did correct. Is look at all these other examples of what happens during the Civil War and present that to here you go. This is what it would be like in the United States. Um, I felt it was realistic, and I think I'm understanding how and why things occurred the way they did. Because the other reason why I'm making this video is I'm hearing people are confused. They're not understanding how and why the Civil War could break out. Like, what is it that led to this conflict, and to the point where like, why are people behaving this way? Um, I I think that was a good choice by the creator, um, because the way I'm seeing events unfold is this is not Trump. This movie is a warning to the person who follows Trump and thinks I can break the law, skirt the law, get things to the point where uh, I can dissolve the FBI and and remain in office. And what uh, because as a result, it presents this unique situation of like what happens, which direction do things go, and um, the other reason why I'm making this video is that my freshman year of at UC Santa Barbara, I took a military science course, and the ROTC program said, "Hey, we're doing a field training exercise at this National Guard base up in Central Valley, and we could always use extra people if you're interested. We need extra bodies. We need soldiers to order around and do stuff, and we'll give you all the gear." And yeah, I'll give it a shot. Yeah, I'd been in Boy Scouts, and within 3 or 4 days, I learned how to be a soldier. Later on, I go back to where I live, and there's no job, so I was like, I'll join the military, and went through a 9-week basic training course. So, um, the what I experienced when I went through Army basic training in February 2001 uh, at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and people were talking about how like, oh, they went to Fort Lost in the Woods, um, uh, like Fort Benning, and I think there was another base or two. So, maybe 4 or 5 places for soldiers enlisting, and this is before September 11th. And there's maybe around 100 soldiers where I was at Fort Jackson, male and female. So if you have every 10 weeks, 400 new recruits are showing up, and after 10 weeks time, or like basically, yeah, like how often were they showing up? But essentially, a bunch of guys, 100 guys show up, and within 10 weeks they come out as trained soldiers, feeling invincible, ready to fight. Trained to just be basic. Point me in direction, and I'll go. Combat. And that's just for service. For the service supply, we need guys to man the trucks, work on the vehicles, do what have you, and that implies that they have to get training for that as well. So that's a whole mechanism, which was part of why the U.S. military, U.S. Army at that point had these different basic training sites, and then their advanced training was all these different locations all around the country. Because I do have some sort of criticism for the movie, and that's the notion of, would there be this final conflict at the Capitol? Would you see fighting in the streets? Would there be destruction and people like, all right, we're gonna like, I did like how, like, okay, let's see the beast. Let's see the people take on the beast, and can they take it out? Like, and and the ultimate conclusion, for the villain, like, yeah, that's exactly, that's what we want to see. But it's this idea of like, all right, would you see the conflict get to that point? And this is why I feel like, okay, I have to, based on the information provided by the creator, could I figure out like what was the timeline? How did things go? Based on 14 months from from what we can establish, that all right, he dissolved the FBI, and then declares that all journalists are shot on sight, persona non grata, like just enemies of the state. The because the other part of war is supply, and if there's a lot of military bases around Washington D.C., so to have a scenario where the president says, "I am the duly elected leader of this country. I am going to do away with the decorum, the proper methodology of how we should run things, and I'm going to dismantle the FBI. I'm going to remain in office for a third term." And the the response, because what I'm thinking is there's a bit more to the movie, or there's a bit more to his thinking, unless Alex Garland was like, no, I just really wanted to get this scenario, and play it out. But what I am, because what's playing on in my mind is, how could you get to that point? What would be the mechanism or the methodology, the steps needed, based on what I know here in 2024, United States. I keep up to date with the news. And the other reason why I'm making this video is because I did listen to all of the C-SPAN coverage of the Mueller report, first impeachment, second impeachment, and the January 6th trials for Donald Trump. And because what I came away with is, one of the things you realize with the first impeachment trial, and because there's a Mueller report, then there's a briefing by Representative Nancy Pelosi, and you hear her say that, no, we have a good case against him. We know exactly what to do. Because the Mueller report was providing a lot of information, indicating that, okay, here's criminal activity, here's something going on, and there's more, but we're not allowed to talk about it. And what the first impeachment hearing provided was, here is former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani being a go-between between Russian President Vladimir Putin and President Donald Trump. And the the sort of like, here's the evidence. There's a lot more evidence we can't present because it's coming from classified sources, but here's the evidence to the public. And by to the public, it's also an extension to the world at large about what's going on, what we know is going on. Here's information that you can be aware of, and it's coming. And here is the source for this information. It's not the president. It's not the president's press secretary presenting information. This is testimonial. This is verified testimonial presented to the public in the House of Representatives. And based on this information, any reasonable, sane person would say, all right, this is criminal behavior. This is grounds for impeachment. So how do you get to the situation in Civil War where he says, all right, I'm going to remain for 3 terms. And as a result, mechanisms of government start coming into place. Okay, the FBI will launch an investigation, and I dissolve the FBI. So I can see and understand, like, okay, yeah, that sort of mechanism. Because, and this is the reason why I'm making this video as well, is what are we seeing? Why are people fighting? Who's fighting who? Why are people behaving the way they're behaving? When you have civil war, you have breakdown in the social structure, in what people are doing. But what's happening is there's a lot of the population that's like, they're just going to ignore. And so why? What's going on? I'm thinking that the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a lot of military leaders decided, okay, resign. I'm not going to be part of this. I don't like how things are going. This is not defending. This is not the Constitution I defended my I swore an oath to defend, and they'll just remove themselves. Because that would be the normal thing. But what if there was a greater agency at work than just one man being the president? What if it was a larger sort of conspiracy organized front? Because political party could have this one candidate who is able to get into the office, but you need the military to be on your side to fight for you, even if it's only some of the military. So they've been working to recruit military officers, and especially general officers, because I think what you're seeing happen in Civil War is everything is to maintain the semblance of order and normalcy. Some states, this kind of fell apart in terms of what can we do, because if politically we are aligned a certain way and our orientation to politics is a certain way, now there's a state of armed conflict. It's law sort of devolves and falls apart, but it's the norms and the structures fall apart. But it's also the populations begin to shift. If the military suddenly is confronted with, hey, our commander in chief has broken his oath, is breaking the laws of our constitution, and uh, okay, no laws from that office are legal. You are duty bound to ignore those laws. So is there this mass conspiracy to remove and replace these generals with people who are loyal to this cause, this conspiracy, this agenda? Because if the president says, all right, I am remaining in office for the third term, however many senators and senators and representatives say yes, we will support that, we vote for that. Political college goes one way or another, and it's just it's so wild. But states like California, Oregon, Washington, even though there's a massive conservative population in all of those states, they happen to have large city populations. Um, but it's also, because to me it's fascinating, because California is the home of aerospace. Like everything flying in the air, military wise, and everything in space. California is developing. We have bases. We have large, areas and facilities dedicated to that. So if California were to say, "Hey, we're going to be fighting," uh, where are the weapons of war being produced? Where is the ammunition being produced? Because that is what matters as well. If it takes 10 weeks to train a soldier, and the soldiers can only fight so long as they have weapons, to fight with. So this is why I find it, this idea, this notion of what is presented in Civil War so fascinating, because if basically, if you're in a state that stays loyal to the president, and well, hey, I live next to a basic training center. Every 10 weeks we crank out 100 guys and and or women to fight. It's a question of, well, how many people can you get to show up to fight? Because, and that's the other thing, is when I went through basic training, it was obvious to me they could have doubled or even quadrupled the classes they were training. So, from 100 people showing up to 400 people. And even then, there could have been more going on, because when we did our graduation, that was a we're a company, platoon, couple platoons. We're a company. Our companies are a battalion. Battalions are part of a brigade. So that's the other thing is, cranking out a brigade every 10 weeks or more. Because if you have, combat and draft, but then who would be doing the draft? And would you do the draft? Because what I'm kind of coming thinking and coming to a conclusion is some of these states realize, okay, we have like the military. The president declares, "I'm staying in office for a third term." The military collapses. There's people overseas. What's going to happen there? But everyone stateside is faced with the dilemma: what's going on? What do we do? And politically wise, there's going to be a number who, all right, I stay where I'm at. I keep doing what I'm doing. But then there's going to be the people who say, like, well, politically wise, I'm opposed to that. And then there's the people who, like, according to the law, according to the Constitution, the rules, things are not supposed to be this way. It's supposed to be different. People with training, people with ability, you want them to stay together, because if they fracture, they can train other people to fight, to do what they're doing. And that means that if you have a special forces unit, because see, that's the thing that is kind of making me wonder and think about, okay, so what happens with your Green Berets, your Rangers, your Special Forces, guys? They're tight-knit, close group of guys and people. Where do they stand and sit politically? If they were faced with, hey, the president is disobeying the law, but for others it's the president is doing what I think is right, what happens with that tight-knit group of people? Would they be able to maintain cohesion? Would they, and would they recognize, because if, as the other thing is that military special forces community is a lot of different hats, a lot of different things, but they all kind of fall under special forces, which is sort of infiltrating and understanding local politics and recruiting populations to your side to fight and work with you. If you recognize that there's an insurgency situation going on in the United States, so that's something else, is that conceivably that's why I get rid of the FBI, because if there is a conspiracy going on, they would be able to expose it. So get rid of the FBI, they can't expose this conspiracy. Get rid of the press. Another reason why I want to make this video. So why get rid of the press? Why declare that the press are shoot on sight? The U.S. government right now, at all levels, even down to civil, I can walk down the street to my city hall and watch their city council meetings or the county supervisor meetings, which is also further down the street. But I can see how the government runs and works. I can go to the planning commission meetings and participate in that. I can go to the utility district meetings and participate there. There's different, and the press is there to cover it. We have the free press. We have the ability for journalists to operate. And this is another reason why I feel I'm in a unique perspective, because where I live in Imperial County, we got one newspaper left. We kind of have another one that's kind of bilingual, but the circulation is very low. We have an online kind of newspaper, but the owner is questionable of their politics and political leaning, and so it's this unique thing of like how and what would happen. But I'm thinking that if there's a conspiracy that's laid out, they get their politicians in the legislative body, they get their man into the executive branch. Because notice that when they it was a woman, and they just shot her right away. Just no, there was no questions. Like there's something about that woman that just, yeah, she was dead on sight. They understood like that's one of the evil ones, one of the people that just needs to be removed. Um, the what sorry if I'm losing my train of thought. Because what's fascinating to me is, from my perspective as a public affairs officer, trained journalist for the Army, um, there I would totally know how to handle the journalists, or at least I have an idea to how to handle the journalists. Actually, if there's a civil war situation like you see in that movie, I'm joining the command staff, and I'm plotting and planning like how we're gonna take the country back, and no landmines. Just that's like that's where I would be helping out. And then it's like, hey, we have journalists, like I'd be directing, like, hey, all you guys who used to be working in public affairs, public relations, need to take care of these guys, document what's happening, and show what's happening. If the journalists are like, hey, we want to go where the combat is, sure, but I'm nowhere, no, putting you near where there's bullets flying, where you can get killed. Where I'm gonna have to write a letter to your folks saying like, so and so died because I let them get into a spot where they could get killed. No, I would not do that. What you see in the movie with uh, the gentleman grabbing him by the back and pulling him back, yeah, that's kind of the ideal. But even then, that's really risking it. But I'm just repeatedly just watching the film, saying like, ooh, no, don't, no, why, what, who, why? You're not announcing yourself, like just these different, like different times. I'm thinking like, all right, they're not operating the correct way for a journalist. I think in that situation, like I'd be saying it's the White House, hello, journalists, the press, you're not going to shoot us, right? Um, but yeah, it's such a good movie. So could you have a Civil War situation break out? And I apologize for being roundabout and bounce around topics, but I'm trying to present and explain some different ideas and things. Um, how many people can you get to join your side and willing to fight for you? What we see in the movie, I feel, is those who are loyal in the military stayed, but they realized we need bodies to fight, because those who left and those who basically were able to collect all the weapons and machinery in all these military bases all across the United States, and in places that were still in whatever political leaning or this or that. Um, because I'm thinking that they decided, oh, the president's going to call them the Western forces and those hooligans, and I'm thinking that's kind of what you see going on in the movie. Is people were put on military uniforms, uh, but they're because they're not U.S. regular military. Their facial hair is going, allowed to grow, and coloring their hair, and the and mixed combat teams, um, or mixed gender combat teams. I think that's the it's almost like a hooligan sort of mentality. I almost want to say is how they're approaching it, because the sniper duel that you see happening in the film, um, it's pretty neat how they're presenting that, and how he just has to wait. The sniper just has to wait and get the right shot. Um, and it's an individual, the scenario of one man's castle defending his castle kind of thing. And well, you get a trained sniper, and the trained sniper will take you out, take care of you. Um, because to me, so the thing for me is, if I was in that scenario, Civil War breaking out, I'm in California, I'm going to join the Western forces. Like, hopefully I'd live long enough, because there's a lot of Republicans where I live. But I live long enough. I'm part of the Western forces. I join their command leadership staff. Hopefully, ideally, we'll see. Because I've read so many books. That's the other reason why I'm talking. Like, man, I've read so many books, studied so much history, and I would know that don't have rapid killing. Don't just start indiscriminately killing people. Just prevent war crimes as much as possible. You can give me any excuse you want. Don't have war crimes. You can't unfire a bullet. You can't unkill a person. Um, have a trial, follow the law. Then you can kill people. But if you don't follow the law, if you don't follow a procedure and a process, you set yourself up for being the bad guys. Is the short answer. But there's a whole another mess of reasons why. Um, I would have my public affairs corps trained and ready to have embedded journalists. And in fact, the way I would present journalists is, um, I would think that, yeah, they would be dressed just like the soldiers, at least with camouflage. They probably would have something signifying their press, um, but they would have, like a GoPro camera on their helmets. No weapon. They may have a shield, and maybe the shield has like a glass, bulletproof glass part to it that says press on it, and so that way, because I would embed one with the different squads and say, like, okay, hey, let that guy be your, will these people shoot at us? And like, hey, you're, I'm press, and because if we see the reaction there in the movie of what the character does, yeah, that's how you determine. How do you feel with the press? Well, oh, okay. Well, why don't you come talk to us? And but yeah, because you're going to see just rampant killing like you see in that film. It's despicable. It's terrible. It's what you don't want to have happen. Um, what else? Yeah, that movie's just so good. But yeah, I would have my public affairs corps there and ready to handle, and just keep the journalists at arm's length, and maneuver them around. Like, make sure, hey, no, you're not getting into harm's way. We don't want you to die. And record the story, and just make sure that, hey, if recording war crimes, recording civilian casualties, and innocent bystanders is what's necessary and important to get the message across, and to really push people into, like, hey, we have to solve things without war, without conflict. Yeah, that's the way you got to go. Because the movie, like, why have movies like this come out? They're what ifs. It's creative. I'm a writer. I'm gonna have this idea and get enough money together, you can make a movie. But it's also one of those, like, there's an audience for it. An audience will resonate with the message, with what's happening in the film, or not. And Alex Garland took a gamble, and I so, because right now there's confusion. People are like back and forth on the film and what's going on in it. What does it mean? And I think it's that those not familiar with the news, those who don't follow history, those who don't understand. Because, like, I'm listening to Michael Duncan's History of Rome and Revolutions podcast. They are great, award-winning. You're going to learn so much listening to those. The Revolutions podcast is wonderful because of how much you're learning about just what happens when society breaks down. And there's people with power and people who, like, hey, what about my power? What about my autonomy? My sovereignty? And it gets bloody. It's terrible. What we see happening in Civil War is it's pretty well done. And so how does it happen? 14 months, the president remains in office, dissolves the FBI, the Western forces sort of declare independence. Colorado is in there. New York City is one way or another. Surprisingly, New York City is predominantly like liberal democratic. There's just a vocal minority. So I think that's kind of what you're seeing with the journalists hanging out in New York City is it's low grade domestic terrorism. So the war is there for them. Man, but yeah, I'd have the journalists embedded along with the military units, put them in safe positions, allow them to cover what they can, where they can, and yeah, it's a lot of killing. I would definitely be taking a lot more people alive, but then again, if there's wanton slaughter and they were all condoning it, and it was obvious that these people they would kill you, then I guess that's kind of the fate that they would get. But that's so see, and that's the thing that people might be concerned about is like, would you see Americans killing Americans? Like, oh, I went to high school with that guy. I know that guy. I grew up with that person. I'm willing to brutalize and possibly kill this person because they're breaking the law. They were going to put me at risk. And yeah, it could happen. Mike Duncan is covering the Russian Revolution and talking about how just so that's one of the things I also want to bring up about the film is that I think in Civil War there should have been I guess there was plenty of evidence of racism, but also the anti-Semitism. So, but then again, the film didn't need it, But but I think that it would have been a bit more. I mean, because it was strongly hinted at with the racism. So, but yeah, what are we witnessing when the press are driving cross country? Different population centers. The problem is not the people; it's the government. And what you end up having is whoever's in political charge, political authority, they're the authority. They're going to maintain the laws and the rules, and people will defer to them. And if the federal government falls apart, but there's still a guy broadcasting claiming that, hey, I'm in charge, and we're going to take care of these hooligans who are causing problems. What you see in the movie with Jesse Plemons' character is he's a militia leader, and by killing that guy, the actor's name, Stephen McKinley Henderson playing Sammy. Sammy goes out a hero's death. He saves the day, saves his friends. That's a militia leader. They're committing war crimes. He's trying to hide the war crimes. And it's the journalists are there to record things. He doesn't want his war crimes recorded. That's why the one gentleman he knew I'm a dead man. They walked in the wrong situation, and they should have fought. So that's the other thing is I think they because there's only two of them with weapons and they were lackadaisical. So that's the other thing I want to bring up is that what you're seeing happen in the movie, I think, is realistic because you can have as many weapons in the location, but do you have enough people trained to know how to use those weapons? So why do you see just the conflict is just very rapid, and the Western forces are winning? Because I think that if the president is faced with the situation that, all right, I'm in civil war, and my normal means of support and leadership is compromised, my military is compromised, everyone in the Secret Service would be deputized as a military leader. Well, all those who remained, because they're all highly trained, military people, and you would want those guys who they know how to kill, they know how to fight, they know they can recognize weakness and other things, but you would put those guys as go out and recruit and train and help us fight, and then replace just everybody you could. But even then, I can't even trust everybody. And then with the military, if you have a skeleton of your Army, Navy, Air Force, the how does that go? The Navy, all the warships would possibly. I mean, I think you would possibly see mutinies, but I would assume bloodless mutinies, and it's just enough sensible people would be able to overpower and disable the leadership who are like, yeah, we're going to follow the president who wants to stay in office, and bring the ships home. Keep those political guys locked up, and when you get to whichever Navy base, put them in the rig on base, keep the ship locked down, and then if there's conflict, well, I guess they're going out to join the conflict, and ideally they join the Western forces. The Army military bases, tanks, Rangers, helicopters, those guys, that could be a split. But it's also the question of how many people remain and how many people are joining. So conceivably, through attrition, the president's forces would just be dwindling. The Western forces would have access to supplies, ammunition, and recruits, and just be able to wear down the loyal forces. And because you can't replace the trained tanker pilot or a tank driver, you can't replace the trained helicopter pilot, can't replace the trained Air Force pilot. Those coming out of retirement, they can do it, and that's but how healthy are those guys? There's a reason why they're in retirement. It's an interesting, in the United States, there's an interesting correlation between those with health problems and those of a conservative mindset. It's every meeting I go to, it's obvious that the what else? But the replacement. So one of the things you're noticing about with Mike Duncan's Revolutions podcast is you can get as many guns together as you want. Do you have the idea that brings enough people together? Do your words convince enough people to join you, to fight for you, and to keep fighting? Because you have all these weapons. as well as conflict, however many people will survive, who's left to fight the second, third, fourth, fifth battle? Will you get more people joining you? And that's what you're seeing happen in Civil War is there's not enough people joining. The country splinters, shatters apart, but people don't move. Some people are like, I'm staying home. I'm protecting my family. I'm going to protect my neighborhood. I'm going to ignore the conflict and we'll just wait for this thing to blow over and we'll go back to normal because that's what they want. They want normal. They don't want conflict. But they're not following the politics that closely. Some politicians purposely muddy the waters, to confuse people, and yeah. So with Kirsten Dunst's character, that's the one part of the film that I was like, it makes sense that because the thing that I'm realizing and have to remember is that she's in the White House, the place where she used to work, the place where she and her friends met, and they talked about things. They were working together for the betterment of the nation and humanity. And here she is witnessing the death throes of the previous government and the places where she would be with friends, and it's destruction. And it's all geared towards war and conflict, and that's why we see her emotional breakdown, and that's why she just starts falling apart, and she just can't, and so like I kind of don't like it, but like I accept it, and there has to be the martyr, and so but such a good movie. What else? The dead bodies being strung everywhere. Yeah, that's legit. And so the military disintegrates. All these guys will basically remove U.S. Army insignia from their uniforms, but keep everything else and form, go to their home states, and most likely, the ones in California, they're going to just probably like, all right, we're going to form the Western Forces, Army, and we're going to start pushing east. And then other places of the country, they're probably relocating their families, forming their own militias, own little protective enclaves. Because the United States, we had demographic maps showing where people are politically. So those who are politically aware would like, okay, we're going to that city. And everybody else is like, yeah, I don't like the conflict. Like, yeah, we're going to join this song. We're going to go over there. Or they see, and that's the thing. Would they remain? Would they choose to, I'm not going to risk myself or my family in a conflict situation. I'm going to remain home. If people know your politics, you have a target on your back, and people will come hunt you down if they feel that you are working against them, even if you're not. Any sort of opposition, partisan, insurrection, rebellion, if you're not a vocal supporter, you will eventually become targeted. So that's why, you don't want to get to that state of a civil war. Yeah, man, this movie. There's just so many good things. The journalists, I would have a journalist corps to escort them and document everything. The reason why what we see in the movie is the military who said, all right, we're not part of the regular U.S. Army, we're going our own way. Yeah, they I'm going to straight paint my head, and that's probably to just help signify like which side they're on, to help with that identification. Um, but I wouldn't. It's like if I'm having a sniper duel, I would have people there to. Anyways, but yeah, just wanted to share my thoughts on the movie by Alex Garland. Alex Garland. Uh, it's it's an amazing movie. I'm yeah, just blown away by it. And I'm trying to like just figure out a process. Like, well, yeah, could that happen? How would that happen? How would it work out? And I think that it makes sense that those opposed to the president remaining for a third term, they would be able to amass a greater force and take care of things, fight things down, but in a bloody way. Anyways, let me know what you think, and talk to you later.